Good evening, St. Louis. Finally celebrating goals being scored and points being won for St. Louis City SC. They dominate the second half and they take down the LA Galaxy 3-0. And we're live right now on the City Hub postgame on Sports Hub STL, presented by Hot Shots Sports Bar and Grill. All the games, all the time, home of STL fans since 1990. And the fans have been gearing up for St. Louis City since 2023, and finally we get some goals here. I'm Matthew Rocchio, joined today in our postgame show by Thomas Welch, and we got a great game to talk about here, a huge win for St. Louis City SC. Thomas, your first thoughts after we finally saw some points go up?
It's just so exciting and energetic. I feel like the fan base is reeling right now. Like when you bring in all of these new guys and a brand new coach, like you want to see a burst of energy right away, and you want to see results right away, right? So to start the season with draws, and it's kind of like rearing its ugly head again. It's like, oh, is this going to be the same thing from last year? Like, does it even matter that Carnell's gone? We've got a great looking guy as the head coach now. Like all those things, there's questions in fans' heads, and rightfully so. Like, what's this team going to look like? They're still trying to find their footing. But obviously against the defending champs in the LA Galaxy, they might have some injuries, and that might have played an integral part. But I think that St. Louis City just came out, dominated in terms of chance creation, and put the ball in the back of the net. And that's how you win games. So it was awesome to see, and gets the fan base fired up again to get back home, I think, next week against Seattle Sounders. So they're trending in the right direction. That's for sure. It was awesome.
Well, glad somebody else is picking up on the objective handsomeness of the new head coach. It's just a fact that we just have to push through it. It's just a real thing, everybody.
Yeah.
But incredible game overall. The attack looked completely revived from the minute the word go. Obviously, LA Galaxy are struggling a little bit. San Diego had another positive finish as well, and so they continue to look good. So right now, you're looking at City has kind of dominated, a team that's reeling in the Galaxy, a team that looks much better than people thought in the Rapids, and also, but did flounder against a team that is looking very good in San Diego. And so you have to kind of weigh all of these things together. But I think the overall feeling around St. Louis City, whereas last week it was pretty negative because of the game, I still think we're in short attention span theater, and it's going to be pretty positive around things today because a 3-0 win looks so good and is so revealing, or so relieving, I should say, after those first two draws.
Yeah, and I think the broadcast said something like this would be the first time that a defending championship team would lose their first 3 games of the season afterwards. So by one way or another, City continues to make history, which is also cool. But yeah, I think it's just trending in the right direction. And like I said, you've got a whole bunch of new players coming in and new parts, and the more games they get under their belt playing together, I think we're just going to continue to see that momentum, and not just in how they play together and building that chemistry and all those things, but in the different ways that they can play together, because we've seen kind of this team so far dominate possession metrics, but that was not the case today, and they still came away with the victory.
You know what? Let's go to our little game notes stat wrap up here. Thomas Welch giving us a little stats to start things out. Gary Ernie, by the way, jumping in. Happy flight home, boys. Obviously, shots out to the team. Hopefully they have a safe flight home from LA. It was a very positive game. A lot of reasons to be happy for it. So looking here at some of the game notes we threw together, City keeps their 3rd consecutive clean sheet, the only team in the MLS to not allow a goal. City finished with just 29% possession, according to SofaScore. They were outshot 23-14, but they produced 5 big chances to just the 3 for LA Galaxy. And then Berkey finishes with 8 saves. By the count that I went through on FB Ref, he notched 7 saves 3 times last year. Never had a game where he had 8 or more saves. So obviously he earned that man of the match mark. I thought Marcel Hartle would have been probably second place in that. But you talking about the possession factor there really made me want to go right to our game stats, because that number, that 29%, just jumps out so much. Because last week against San Diego, when the number was pretty negative, we'll change up the cameras here. The numbers were pretty negative last week, and I think it was 33%. And I was talking to Tom Timmerman of the Post-Dispatch and STL today, and he remarked that that's the lowest in City history. And so I know that some of these sites have different numbers, and so maybe the SofaScore number is going to end up being a little bit lower than some of the other ones. But I mean, they didn't really control the ball, and obviously they were outshot, and so they took advantage of the chances, and it really was more of a second half performance, because obviously nothing, too much happened in the first, and there was that long stretch from probably about the 15-minute, from maybe the 15-minute mark to about the 35-minute mark, where LA really was pressuring and constantly getting good looks. So I still don't know if I know what this team is, but right now they're sitting pretty with 5 points after 3 games, and that's not half bad.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, do you think, like, obviously the defense has been good and Berkey has been good, but do you think that this team is weighing heavily on its defensive play right now, or do you think Berkey's kind of just, I mean, obviously the saves today, it looked like he was kind of, pulling out all the stops and kind of willing this team to victory, but other games it looks like the defense has been pretty consistent in locking down the attack. So I don't know whether you're leaning on the defense or leaning on Berkey, or is a combination of both, but they're doing something right on the back end for now. That's for sure.
I guess that, do you want to go? I mean, if you want to go eye test, letting up that many shots is one thing, but I think it is important to note that more than half of those shots came from outside the box. By SofaScore's number on those 23 total, they put 10 inside the box and 13 outside the box. So to that point, how many of those 8 saves are the toughest saves? Now, we know at least 4 of those saves, if you go back and watch the game, are very, very tough saves that Berkey probably only makes, and it's probably a goal in the other way. So very much could have been a 2-2 game, and then things aren't open wide for Betcher to get number 3, and you probably don't walk away with a 3rd point, so on and so forth. So I like your question, but I will say, if you want to go look at numbers, 1.82 XG and holding him down to 0, that kind of shows you that, yeah, you're right. Berkey's doing a lot of work. The defense is better, but Berkey is doing a lot of work. Whereas last year, you saw, I think, a lot of chances where Berkey was just left completely out to dry. Now he's got a chance at least, because they're closing down, and those huge gaps that were there last year aren't there as much as they were this year. Really quickly, I want to go to some of the chats as we're getting them in. If you're watching here on YouTube, please jump into the chats. We will get to your chats. If you want to start some conversation, we'll get it going. Will Sutton says, let's do that again. Forgiving the past 2 weeks. Yeah, obviously, that's what we want to see. Dan Ulrich jumping in here. In Berkey, we trust. Hard not to. It's safe to say I got a few messages on Twitter today during the game, Thomas, about getting that extension rolling already after today's performance.
Yeah, have to. I mean, and he was talking to Twellman before the game, and he's like, yeah, I want to be here. Like, I love City. Hopefully they can come to an agreement. And obviously we here in St. Louis love him too. So the last thing you want to do is see a guy like that walk out the door and have success somewhere else. But like you were doing, going off of the chat City Tactics, who I follow on Twitter. It's a great Twitter follow. Said to sell Klaus's job is to score goals. How do you feel about that, Rocchio? I mean, I felt like Klaus's fingerprints were all over this game, and kind of the chance creation and the goals that happened were a direct result of that. It was gorgeous play from him.
Yeah, I mean, that was fantastic. And Chat City's being extremely sarcastic. He's in the Klaus Club, if you want to call it that. People, and I was a big person last year. I got in a lot of Twitter fights after games that ended with City losses or City draws, defending the way that Klaus plays, because if you have a really talented player and he has a specific style that accentuates his game, let him play that game. If it fits into your scheme, hell, even better. It's almost like you planned it this whole way to have him be one of your first players that you signed a year before you even hit the ground running, because the idea from Lutz's perspective is, if my 9, or my false 9, if you want to get really friggin' technical with it, if my false 9 can press, I can do a lot of things with the scheme I want to build out. And so he was incredible today. And I think one of the bigger things is, I think there's a lot of people who accepted that Klaus would drift deeper because of his pressing mentality, or in the hold-up play with other guys running off of him. But I think what bothered people a lot was when Klaus would get wide, because in their mind, it meant that there wasn't that punch in the middle you needed. And that's why I thought there was a little stretch there in 2023 where Klaus and Adeniran worked really well, because Adeniran wanted to be straight in line on the goal, taking shots as much as possible. And so Klaus working on the exterior worked really well. I couldn't have asked for a better game for Klaus to have than those 3 or 4 moments he had. I think all of them might have been on the right wing, where he just broke his man down and created offense out of nothing, created a buildup out of nothing, created an attack out of nothing. And then you have the other 2 attacks that he combined with Hartel and Toyshirt. The first one that Toyshirt puts way off the side netting. And then the second one, which was not identical, but very similar, of those 3 players combining with a couple progressive looks back and forth, those 3 guys moving it forward, through balls, breaking lines of defense, and connecting for an attack. The fact that we got those looks from those guys, because that was really what was missing in Colorado against Colorado, is that they were pushing the ball forward and they were connecting passes. But the thing that changes thing in soccer, this is the one thing. This is a great thing to learn at the very beginning. If you're wondering, how do I see the game a little bit differently? The more players on the defense that a pass takes out of the play, the better the pass is. So if you have a pass that takes out 9 of the 10 players on defense, it's the best. It's a pretty damn good pass. If you have a pass, the 3 guys behind you, and you take out 4 players, do the math. That's 4 behind you. You just 3 behind you, or 4 behind you, 4 in front of you. There's only 2 other players on the field other than the tender. Pretty good freaking pass. And so that was the difference tonight, is they had line-breaking passes that cut through the defense and opened things up. And
yeah, I agree with you. And I think that the chemistry that Klaus had with Giacchini when he was here was adamant in how many goals that Giacchini scored, and kind of that direct, straight to goal, like almost like tunnel vision, like I'm going to put this in the back of the net kind of thing, right? But having guys around him now, like Hartle, like Teuscher, like Betcher, that have almost that same kind of scoring capability, you would think like the output and the significance of Klaus and his role would triple, right? But it's a long-term investment, because, you know, there's moving parts, there's new guys all the time. Like, that's going to take some time, and building that chemistry will take some time. But I think tonight we saw a perfect example of what it looks like when it's poetry in motion. And it's just, I mean, it is easy to forget sometimes that, like, you know, I get people on Twitter being like, he's not scoring, like, that's his job, why do we play him? All these things. But then you see a game like tonight, just an absolute masterclass, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, let's lay off him here a little bit.
And honestly, that argument annoys me more than just the vacuum of it being about Klaus, which is when it comes to sports like this that are just about fluidity, offensive, defense is always connected. Hockey, basketball, hell, if you want to expand it to lacrosse, and of course soccer, you staying in this rigid idea that positions have to be static, that that play has to be static, that there's no stylistic difference, or that one style is inherently worse than another unless you play it a certain way. I mean, there's always things around this. You know, I know people, not to split this off into other sports, but people bitch about, the mid-range game is gone in the NBA. Well, not if you're really good at it, it actually opens things up and makes you better. And so Klaus doing things that a regular 9 doesn't do, which is the thing that people complain about, is what makes him so great for this system. His press play is incredible. His ability to take guys on the outside without being the fastest guy is admirable. His hold-up play when he has guys who can run off him, Teuscher, Bescher, Hartel, he's fantastic at that kind of stuff. And I just think you have to understand that there's more than one way to come at this. And they decided a long time ago, how early they signed Klaus, this is how they were going to come at it. Lutz understands the kind of player Klaus is. He's known him for a very long time. This isn't surprising anybody. And so people keep pushing back on it. And the same thing with the possession numbers. He will be pushing back. Well, this isn't Carnell's City anymore. They're not going to be low possession. It's going to be a possession-based team. No, it's not. And don't believe me. Call me a liar. Do not believe me. Say I'm an idiot. Completely fine. The coach is saying it. And if you want to say he's wrong, well, then you're a lost cause. That's all I got to say about that.
I feel like a good segue into that conversation is the conversation of Kyle Hebert, because I thought he played great tonight, but he's often been a scapegoat for City fans. But you also look at, like consistently since Kyle Hebert has been here, not only Carnell, not only Hackworth, but also Mellberg now are giving him considerable minutes and giving him not just minutes at center back, but also minutes out on the outside. So it's like it's easy for us to be like, oh, he's not good at passing the ball on the outside. And I think we all can agree that he's great at defense and he's locked down there. But we saw him with a nasty assist tonight. So maybe these coaches know something, and I think it also kind of speaks to like maybe Kyle Hebert himself isn't as comfortable on the outside as he is inside, but he's willing to learn and willing to take on that extended role for this team. So the more minutes he gets there, the more he's obviously going to be more comfortable there, and his play is going to increase with that. And I think we're seeing that do dividends tonight as well. So it's just kind of giving them time to figure things out as a whole, instead of just jumping down their throat and being like, get him out of here, take the money and run.
That's another thing. Again, new coach, slightly different scheme, not an overall philosophy change, but a different scheme, no doubt. Also, I know Chat City Tactics is in the chat, and he's been one of the people who's harped on Hebert's passing a lot. So I have a question for him. So I'm going to ask the chat a question. I'm going to flip things around. What foot did Hebert get the assist with? Because I know if there's anybody on this planet who knows that question off the top of his head, it's Chat City Tactics. But I think the Hebert not being able to pass thing has been one of my been to me one of the hilarious, like, theory icebergs in nerd culture. If you're ever on YouTube like we are right now, and if you've never seen a theory iceberg, pick one of your favorite shows, go to YouTube, click show name theory iceberg, and then say goodbye to the next 3.5 hours of your life. And then afterwards, come back and thank me, Rock STL on Twitter. You're welcome. So anyway, Theory Iceberg City, deep cut Theory Iceberg. Kyle Hebert can't pass. Chat City Tactics, by the way, says no comment on that one. Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought so. Anyhow, Dan Ulrich. Anyway, deep cut comment there, and I'm glad we got to it easily. Dan Ulrich, thoughts on Mellberg subbing out Klaus and Teuscher early in the second half had me worried for a minute. Wanted to get to this chat because of you bringing up Hebert's positioning, because obviously forced that way because of two very possession, or I should say defense, and then a very possession-based switch. The first one being, let me get exactly in front of me. So they bring in Yarrow, and they bring in Bescher. They bring in Yarrow and Bescher for Klaus and Teuscher. So that drops everything back. And it didn't surprise me that much because, again, Wallem is super versatile. If you read anything about him, he plays in both the middle and the attacking third, left, center, or right. So you have that piece that you can just move around any way you want. We know now. I like when we see more games from coaches, because you can start like building a list of like habits that start to form a little bit. Giannis Horn kicking outside the left wing back in a defensive formation. I think we can circle that one as something that Olaf is clearly comfortable with right now, because he did it in the preseason because they were short on bodies, and now he's done it multiple times as the switch move in game. So clearly he likes that move. So he wants to get more defensive. Yarrow drops back. Hannes Horn kicks up. I'm okay with it because Horn played a very aggressive form like everyone did last year at left back, getting all the way up to the midway mark and more. But I do understand that Taylor Twellman and Dan Ulrich's criticisms to that move, which is they did lose some of the continued cohesion and control and progression that they had in the minutes leading up to that change. But at the same time, I also understand why Olaf went to the move and why he feels so comfortable, considering the way Yarrow's played and the way that Horn's played in that switch.
Yeah, and I think, he might provide some more kind of transparency in post-game comments as well. But it could be as simple as like just getting tired legs out. We've seen that he's capable of doing that and comfortable doing that, even with Leuven game one. We're like, what is happening? Oh, he's leaving the pitch. I don't like this. But he was just like, yeah, he was tired. He didn't have his legs under him. We want to get guys in there that are, 100% high intensity, and the strikers in our system are constantly running. So just getting new legs in there, I think, is a benefit for the system as a whole. And getting guys like Betcher as like a super sub is pretty decent as far as depth goes for this team too. And then he finds the back of the net, so it worked out pretty well, I think, for City.
I tweeted out that we got to think of some kind of nickname for Bescher that's relative to him coming on games and absolutely taking over, because I think that's going to be something we see. I just don't think that Bescher and Teuschert's a great combo, but Klaus Bescher or Klaus Teuscher works so well that I just think you can throw it around in so many different ways. By the way, Matt Baker from Flyover Footy is doing a great job tweeting out the press conference. Appreciate that, because we cannot be there. Olaf, and I'm reading here from Matt Baker STL on X. I appreciate, again, his hard work here. Olaf Mellberg said post-game that his change in formation at 62 minutes, going to the 5-4-1, was less about bunkering and more about handling what LA Galaxy was succeeding in, which was space outside the three midfielders, shutting down spaces they were finding in the first 15 minutes of the second half. Space outside three midfielders and shutting down spaces they were finding in the first 15 of the second half. I think that makes sense because what they were doing there is what you do there is not only you take away the width, but specifically because you always have the extra wide players, 5 at the back, you can then pinch Wallum and it would have been Hartel. Wallum had shifted from the right from the left to the right when Horn did his switch with Yarrow. So he went to the right, Hartel's on the left, and then those guys were pinching inside. That takes away that passing channel that you try to hit that channel from the outside wing into the inside. So you put a body in that channel and you take away it. I think that's exactly what Olaf is referring to, and I think that's a good move. You're going to sack that, and that's another thing about all these sports we're just referring to. It's always a give and go. It's always what are you balancing and what are you giving up a little bit? That's always the question in soccer. Rarely can you dominate every part of the pitch. You have to decide where are we going to focus, where are we going to be weak, where's our strong side, where's our weak side, where's our overload, so on and so forth. And I think you saw City throughout both phases of the game, all 3 phases of the game, transition, offense, and defense. They balanced this game perfectly.
Yeah, and I think the broadcast was talking too about how it felt like at halftime when they made that formation change, it kind of pushed up their line of confrontation. So you're getting less of like a constant attack against City's defense and more of a struggle in the midfield. And I think that helped, balance out the legs too. And Berkey didn't feel like he was just constantly getting an onslaught of shots as much as he was before that. So like you said, I think it just kind of, and Olaf too, I think not that Carnell was bad at making those adjustments mid-game, but I mean, with the pedigree that Olaf has, you would think that guy knows pretty well like what he's doing. So anytime he's making those in-game adjustments, you feel pretty confident that he's moving the team in the right direction, and obviously getting the result afterwards and seeing the results of that formation change, I think is more proof and another pin in his laurels in his short time as coach of STL City.
No doubt there. And if you want to get into the YouTube chat here on Sports Hub STL, this is the City Hub postgame presented by Hot Shot Sports Bar and Grill. All the games, all the time. Conrad Maloney, he's in the chat. Get in, City. Let's go. What a shift by the lads. What a Euro-baked comment on City. I like that. You know what? I'm okay with it. I like calling them the lads. Why not?
Yeah.
Have a game. Is that what they like to say over there? By the way, a little other City news here, as City 2's playing right now, and they are rolling over North Texas SC. City 2 winning 3-0 right now in the 52nd minute. And I believe this was a rematch of a championship matchup, and Sounds City is apparently taking that mindset to heart. City 2 absolutely just slaughtering North Texas SC. And right now the City structure up 6-0 on this Sunday. Not a bad day to be wearing the City red right now. Conrad Maloney also comes in. Why tune into MLS Wrap-Up when you have STL Sports Hub? Oh, Conrad Maloney. God, right on my
What a guy.
God,
what a lad.
What a lad. What a lad. He says his wife's from UK, so you have to support the culture. Come on, you Spurs. Oh, right. And not only do I feel for you because you're a sweet guy, but clearly you're a sweet guy because your heart's been broken so many times. I know there's some other Spurs fans around town. Chat City Tactics watching the replay tomorrow with one thing in mind. Did Wallum drift central and right because he wanted to or because he had to? Well, I guess that's in my opinion that's what's fun but also tricky about watching tape is because my question right off the bat, the very first right side overload, that right side overload is fascinating to me. Doing it twice in the first 15 minutes was also, I don't think we've ever seen that from a City team. They usually would go short up the left side and then long on the right side. So seeing short buildups in the overloads on the right sides was so rare. But the very first one where Totland screws it by being very stupidly offsides, swings the cross in, and there's a dead zone, and Wallum's right there. It does not look to me that was Wallum just running into an area that no one else was in because the ball was there. They were overloading the right side, and Wallum was pushing hard central. That was a plan. And the fact that we saw another overload to the right side with Wallum coming not even from central to right. He almost came from the back through the central to the right side, which is a move that looks like a planned overload, not a drift central because of want. But again, there's always the balance of how much freedom does he have to do it. So does the want or because to matter? I think that he saw space and he attacked it, which is his job. And I love that idea because we saw those switches and overloads with Hartle on the left side during the preseason game, but we haven't seen him in the first 2 games. And so, man, that was really nerdy and really exciting.
Yeah, and I think it benefits the team too if it is an active push to drift centrally, because I remember watching Wallam's highlight reel, and oddly enough, for a guy that's, I mean, he's not massive, but he's a little like short, you know, but there was a ton of header goals. So his capability of scoring out of the air, I think if he's pushing into the box on, you know, potential crosses or whatever it might be, I think that just provides added offensive firepower for City. And obviously he's great with the ball at his foot as well. So the distribution is there too. So I've no problem with him drifting central. And it also looked to me like he's got a little bit of a physical side to him today.
Yeah,
he's banging bodies left and right. Like that's kind of that blue collar mentality that Lutz and Carolyn and all of them have talked about. Like you want to energize the team, is like not being, you know, going into 50-50s like a car crash, obviously not want to get injuries, but not shying away from contact. And he fits right into that mold. So that's awesome.
By the way, if you are a fan of the youth, I wanted to get the box score up here. So City 2 took a 1-0 lead in the 2nd minute on an own goal from a North City FC defender. But the 2 goals since then have been by Brendan McSorley, a.k.a. McSorley, and Miggy Perez put in the 3rd goal in the 44th minute. They are right now in the 56th minute again with a 3-0 lead. Goals by Brendan McSorley, a.k.a. McSorley, and Miggy Perez getting back into the scoring side as well. Hey, advertising comes on and says, has anyone checked on Eric Sontag? We talked to Eric Sontag of the Domesticated Gamblers in our final segment of the Randy Carricker Show featuring Brooke Grimsley on Friday morning, and we were talking about how the over-under was 3. And we were joking around about how after what you've seen, how can it be 3? Bet the under all day long. And Eric Sontag's right. Feel lucky to push on the under 3. Glad we didn't bet the mortgage, Rock. That would have been a sweat. And Dan Ulrich says, hey, advertising the over-under push. And I guess it did. And whew, thank gosh it did, Eric Sontag. You're not wrong about that one. Simon Bescher, watch out for him again. The dagger, the closer, the finisher, I don't know, the Slew Reaper. Like, what do we want to go with here as the nickname for Bescher as the 60th minute killer? Because I think he's just going to work in that role this year.
Maybe like the Billiken. I don't know. That'd be kind of something I feel like with the Slew.
Oh, you know what?
Slew underlines makes a lot of sense, I think.
Like, can somebody who's better at graphic design than I am get me like a Billiken logo, but one that's like a horror version, like a horror version of the Billiken logo? We'll get it printed out on a sign at City Park, and when he comes into the 80th minute when it's tied 1-1, drop the lights and then just and hold up like this spooky Billiken, and that'd
be awesome.
We'll turn the Billiken from kind of a fun character into more of a terrifying one.
Yeah.
Bescher's on fire. Your defense is terrified. There it is. I like it. Conrad Maloney jumping in. I like it. Hey, we need to brand this up because that's honestly one of the things about City that I've been so excited about this year is the depth they have. Is if people are healthy, they can attack you and they can do so many things. They can obviously shell up because they have so much defensive depth. And we saw Timo Baumgartel get his debut. Excuse me. In fact, I saw somebody, Will Sutton, who will join us at times throughout this season on City Hub, and you can catch his writing as well on Sports Hub STL. When does Timo crack the starting lineup? We saw Timo today, and it just shows you so much bench depth. You can get Baumgartel in defense. You can get Yarrow in defense. You can bring Watson in the midfield. You can put Watts out wide if you really want to. You can bring in Toyshirt off the bench if you're not starting him. You can bring Bescher off the bench if you're not starting him. You have Ostrak when he gets healthy. Oh, yeah, by the way, Celio Pompeu, maybe Rasmus Alm eventually. Just so much depth, and you can just use that to craft all these different lineups, always have fresh legs. I'm really excited to see as this team advances. Of course, there's going to be injuries, But as this team advances, how does Mellberg continue to use that bench? Because today, while it was up and down, I like that he was at least a little aggressive with the usage at times.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too because you can make that direct comparison to the St. Louis Blues, right? So it's like that team is built for depth. They're not always, I mean, I really don't think with the Blues or with City, like you're not gonna be able to really go out in free agency or in a transfer window or anything like that and be like, Lionel Messi, welcome to St. Louis. Like it's just not realistic. Most of the time to really go to bat with those guys just because they want to go to one of the coasts or they want to get as much money as possible. So for City, like building through their depth and not just having like one guy that's leading the team and puts up 20 goals or whatever, but then the rest of your team is just scrubs. Like it's the same kind of philosophy that the St. Louis Blues use in beating teams, not with their first and second line necessarily, but with their bottom six. So I think it just feels like that blue collar mentality resonates throughout St. Louis. And it's cool to see that City's kind of fallen in line. Cause like you said, you can be worried about Simon Betcher coming in as a super sub. And then Akil Watts comes in today and immediately has a chance, like as soon as he steps on the pitch. So they can beat you many in multiple ways. And it's always exciting to see those players come on. I can't wait to see Pompeu again this year. It's like, I feel like he's just, I mean, he had that comment at the pep rally that he was like, I feel like I'm a dog. I'm starving to compete. Like those are the kind of guys you want on your bench, not somebody that's just, comfortable laying back and be like, well, these guys got it. Like they're going to go out and win. Like this guy wants to make a name for himself. And I think everyone on City has that same mentality. So it's perfect to just slot them in wherever they can get minutes and whenever they can help guys rest their legs.
Conrad Maloney, depth is going to go a long way for this squad. We saw Timo's debut today. Thank God it's not Timo Werner. See, there's that Tottenham Hotspur sadness coming out. You got every Spurs fan, you get like two nice moments with them, and then it's just like, and we're never going to win the Premier League.
It's like
and they just immediately go sad sack on you. God. Pump up. You're a big London club. You got the best park in the city, and it gets you, stuff. Anyhow, Timo has been talked about a lot. Fans want to see him. Taylor Twellman was talking about him like he's in the starting lineup as soon as he's at 100%. Is that how you see it?
I think so. I mean, I trust Taylor Twellman for sure too. And I hadn't really seen a lot of Timo since he hit the pitch, but the second he did, I was like, wow, that guy is humongous. I could see why he'd be a pretty good option out of the air. And
pretty deft passer apparently too. And,
yeah.
and we heard just on Thursday or Friday, I should say, we heard Olaf Mellberg talk about how they want to get the depth in the pass going from the back. And I think we saw that today. Kessler's really good at it. Horn's pretty good at it. And obviously I think that comes from a guy who's played a lot of outside left back. You have to be a much more adept passer than usually at center back. And so when you think about Horn, Kessler, and Baumgartel, I mean, all three of those guys can really handle things. I know Berkey loves having center backs in front of him that he's confident can handle the ball. So that confidence combined with then that offensive punch, man, it's hard not to get excited about that.
Yeah, and it's just another link in the chemistry with the Germans too. So I mean, anytime you can dip into that, well, I think you're set up for success because they're kind of it's hard to keep track of how many they got right now, but it feels like they're shooting 100% on all of them. So the more minutes you can get in there with all of those guys, and that we talk about how it takes time to establish chemistry with all of these moving parts, but those guys have known each other and played with each other for such a long time. They're kind of past that level of, once you play soccer with someone, there's almost like that integral bond there forever. And so those guys just feeding off of each other on the same team now. You talk about it as much as you can in that connection with the youth team, but it's a real thing. And I think it provides success for this team down the stretch for sure.
One thing we have not talked about tonight that we need to talk about more, a name I have not seen in the chat. I'm very disappointed in you, chat. I mean, we got to talk about the game from Marcel Hartl because I'm little victory lap. I thought the Germans were going to have a huge game, and the Germans had a huge game. Horn was solid. Hartel was incredible. Leuven was back to his old self. Teuscher obviously scored. The guy who has a German name but isn't German obviously had an incredible game in João Klaus. So, I mean, the Germans were incredible, but Hartel was amazing. And this is a guy who had 8 key passes against Colorado, which is nuts. But then he goes completely stagnant against San Diego. Every pass he was hitting, every cross seemed to find a San Diego defender before it found a City player. But today, the dynamism from Hartel stood out. But also for me, what jumped out, and Taylor was talking about this too, and I was talking about this on Twitter, was how much he was tracking back and covering box to box. Olaf talks about wanting to have all box to box players. And I was surprised by how little Hartel was going box to box in either game 1 or 2. And I think there was a reason why the press was just missing a little bit at times against San Diego, and why Olaf said they were trying and he liked their defense, but they were just a little bit behind and their aggressiveness was a little bit off in the press. I thought Hartel's coverage running 7 miles, I thought those things, away from the passing, away from the goal scoring, those parts of Hartel's game were dominant and an even bigger part in the first half and the early scoring.
Yeah, and I've really appreciated Hartel because, like, we've seen this team in its genesis, right? And the biggest thing with Leuven was like, well, he likes playing the 6. We like keeping him back a little bit, but also at the same time, you want to provide that offensive bounding forward midfielder.
Leuven's an 8 playing super deep. I don't want to get into this.
Yeah. But you want to have that player that can bound forward at the same time as you have Leuven, because both of those are so key to the success of any team, but specifically the way that City is set up. So I think Hartel came in and we're kind of looking him at being that guy, right? And some games he's that guy and some games he's not. But more often than not, like, he is the missing link in that midfield. And like you said, just, it's not just that he's staying forward either. Like when he can get all the way back and help Leuven, like, he's obviously an offensively gifted player, but he's not bad defensively either. And I think that is kind of in that spine that Lutz talked about building out from. He's an integral piece for sure for City.
He was incredible. And just that coverage and him accepting that mentality is interesting to me, because the last time we heard from Hartel in 2024, he was talking about how he wanted to be a central attacking player, supporting a striker, not far off. And he seems to have accepted a different role. And I think what we see is a coach who's been able to implant, maybe not to everybody, but he's been able to impart this idea of, if you do this running, it will benefit you. And that's, I mean, if you're going to have the mentality of we're going to have box-to-box players all over the field, then you better find a way to get them to buy into the idea of that running will get you paid because you will score. And if you watch the goals today, what happens? All of that running for Hartel solidifies this game, keeps those shots that were those 13 outside shots and 10 inside shots, keeps it from being 8 outside shots and 15 inside. And maybe that's the difference that makes it a 2-2 game later on or something along those lines. But those things that he does for 60 minutes are so big and are so important that he then does those things. And then all you need is 2 or 3 moments where he gets into the counterattack with Teuscher and Klaus. And that changes the game. And so that's why I think it's so important that people need to focus on, don't just focus on the scoring. Don't just focus on the assists or the key passes. Focus on just the 5 miles of running that he did from the midfield to the defensive box and back throughout this game, because those 60 minutes, and hell, those 80 minutes impacted the game more than maybe the 5 minutes did, and they wouldn't have happened without each other. But undoubtedly, if he slips up 4 times in those 80 minutes, bad things happen. If he slips up a couple times in those 5, they probably still win 1-0. And so I think that's the important thing with guys like Hartel to really understand, and with guys like Klaus when he's not scoring, to really understand how they impact the game. Think about everything they're doing for the 80 minutes other than the 3 or 4 minutes of their attacking time that you want to focus on. And Hartel's game could be a masterclass on that today.
Yeah, it's just like, keep running and you will be rewarded. And I think day 1 of the preseason, Olaf said, "Hey guys, congratulations. We're going to do a fitness test today." And that was like, I mean, it looked like guys were keeled over, throwing
Klaus
up.
was not happy about that.
I mean, that looked insane. Even like,
he was angry.
Yeah, even as like I go to the gym every day, and I was like, I don't do any cardio. I would have died. Like, that's crazy. But to that point, it's like, if you're going to have box-to-box players, they got to be comfortable running the whole game. And if you are running the whole game, I mean, like Hartel on his goal, he's like just running into the lane, and then all of a sudden, like, it opens up. He hits a second gear,
It is a
flies
crazy
past his
finish.
defender and just roofs it. Like that
is a nuts finish. Like we probably haven't focused enough on the fact that that is a crazy finish from that angle where the keeper's sliding out and creating and got pretty big. That's a nuts angle.
Yeah. But it's awesome. It's just, I think all of that cardio combined, like think about if this team continues to run at the rate that it is right now. And like, I know if I'm gassed and my coach sees me gassed, he's not going to be like, well, you're Marcel Hartel. Like we can't sub you. Like we have the depth to give you a break. So if I just empty the tank, I know that he's going to take me out and we'll be fine. But if you look at that team and what the effects of that will be when this team comes to the playoffs, I mean, you would think realistically there's going to be flying past guys because they're so used to running so much. Nobody's going to be able to keep up with them.
You ever see the movie Coach Carter?
No.
Oh gosh, if anyone out there knows Coach Carter, you understand why I'm bringing it up right now after Brian's point there. I'm Matthew Rocchio. That's Brian Welch. This is City Hub Postgame. As long as you guys are watching and commenting in the chat, we'll keep talking City after a huge 3-0 victory. I hope you're okay with that, Thomas.
Yeah, I'm cool.
Sales Fishing, Brian Welch. The guy on the right must have went to MSU, and he says 3-0. Let's go. Do you want to handle that one?
Yeah, Brian, nice to see you. Thanks for popping in the chat. I did go to Mizzou, as you know, because we went there together. So I'm sure I'll see you soon. But yeah, like I said, appreciate you hopping in the chat and checking in on a 3-0 victory. We actually played intramurals. Obviously, it's my brother, but we played intramurals at Mizzou, or not Mizzou, MSU together too. So, I'm just switching my alma mater.
Oh, geez. You just lost some bear points, man. Oh my gosh. Clip that off. Is he even a graduate? Mo Football TV. Hartel equals Doogie King. All right, I'm gonna need an explanation on that
Dougie.
one.
So Hartel hit the Dougie before the game. He was dancing. We should have known he was gonna score before that.
Is Dougie with a song spelled with 2 O's? Have I been spelling it wrong my
entire
life?
It's OU. It is OU.
Okay. Thank you.
It was a typo.
Thank you. Berenstain bear me over here. I'm going to get really angry. Gary Ernie, Hartel, better than Roos. Well, he certainly was that game. I know Taylor Twellman was talking about Roos's wrap on his leg the entire time, which I thought it was interesting that Chris Durkin went in a couple times hard. I wonder if that affected him. But, yeah, Hartel was dynamic today. And the difference is that Hartel's, 26? And he ran 7 miles. And Marco Royce used to do that in a different league when he was much younger and doesn't do that now. And that's just kind of how that's going to go.
Yeah. And that's the benefit. I mean, obviously it would have been nice. We were all pining for Marco Royce to come to St. Louis, but also at the same time, like Luce has said time and time again, like he doesn't want City to be a retirement team. So obviously Royce is on the older end of players in the league, and he's past his prime. I would say not that he's not good still, but just like he was better when he was younger. So getting players in like Hartel, like Toy Shirt, that are in the midst of their best days, I think is a spell success for City and anybody that they play.
Yeah, just a fantastic game all around. Like you said, the defense, I think your point earlier on, I want to revisit that because Berkey did have to make 8 saves, which is a bigger number than he had to make all last year when we talked about the defense so much. He did face almost a straight up 2 XG, which is a meaty number to give up defensively. But when you get into some of the other numbers, and we got into them earlier on in the show, and we'll put them up right now here. Again, they keep their 3rd consecutive clean sheet. They did outproduce LA with the big chances. They produced 5 to LA's 3, but they were outshot 23-14, and they did finish with a crazy low possession number of only 29%. So just some final thoughts really quickly on the possession, on the defense, Thomas. Are you all sunshine and lollipops, or is there some worry for you with some of those numbers?
I think there definitely is some worry for me, but that worry starts and ends with Roman Berkey because I think he is the best goalie in the league. So obviously if you've got this large sample size of shots against an XG that he's facing and he still pulls out a clean sheet, like that bodes pretty well for you going down the stretch. Now, that being said, obviously you want those numbers to dwindle. And I think getting obviously Timo more minutes should help that, but also the depth on the back end and managing that should help you as well as Olaf being able to change that system like we talked about to benefit you more defensively. I think spells success for this team down the stretch. But my biggest thing was this first goal, right? Obviously, it was a messy one, kind of mishandled by the goalie and just tapped into the back of the net. But I would love to see, like, it feels like City, at times they're decisive. Obviously, they're creating chances left and right. So they are going to eventually find the back of the net just from the law of averages there. But if you can just maximize the amount of shots you're getting on target and creating chaos in the box, like more goals like that sloppy one, I feel like will happen. Or you're just going to bang a screamer like Klaus almost did when he hit the post. Like things like that, I think they could improve a little bit more instead of trying to find like a backdoor tap in. It doesn't necessarily have to be a sitter. Like just fire one on when you have a window. And I think that's kind of an area that they could expand on as the season progresses.
Okay. That's very interesting because and this might be a philosophy difference. I think this is sometimes we run into it. We run into it as fans sometimes when people tell me, well, City needs to play with more possession. I'm like, yeah, I know you want that, but they're not going to. So can we move on the conversation?
Yeah.
So this is a philosophy thing. I hate wasting possessions on shooting it from 30 yards away. I hate tacking it up from outside the box because you can find a better shot than that. Unless they're parking the box like, old school Jose. And so it's interesting to me that you go to that because with how skilled this team is, and I want them to work harder for goals. I mean, that to me, they left 2 points on the field against Colorado because they didn't work hard enough for goals and because they weren't striving to make the extra pass to open up that backdoor tap in. And I know we've seen a lot, and this might be an issue with the hat on your head right now. We might be a little charged with guys going with extra passing and shuttling it around one more time instead of shoot.
Probably fair.
and so I think this might be a little bit PTSD from another St. Louis sport.
Yep.
Because I want them to work, and when you have the skill of Hartl and Leuven who can pick up passes, I mean, it wasn't a goal, but like that Leuven cross to Totland, I mean, right on a dime. And I mean, just whips that thing absolutely on a freaking dime, puts it on back post right on his foot. Perfect cross. When you have guys who can do that stuff routinely multiple times in a game, I want them to work a little bit harder. I think I would much rather than, not just because of the way it ended, because the XG was about even, 1.82 for the Galaxy, 1.98 for St. Louis, but I would much rather have 14 total shots, 5 big chances, versus 23 total shots and 3 big chances. And we're talking about positioning, 14 total shots for City, 10 of them inside the box, 6 of those on target. I mean, or 6 of the, only 5 shots on target. Excuse me. They actually got more shots on target. But anyhow, shots in the box, 10 to 4 outside the box. I love that discrepancy. I'll take that all day long.
Yeah, and I think it definitely stems from watching Blues hockey, that's for sure. Because now it feels like
I'm really glad I got you to admit that. Like we did a little therapy session right here live on the air on City Hub post game to figure out, oh, wait a second, some of this is bleeding over. I think there's a couple. If we did a lobotomy on St. Louis fandom right now, I think you could find some like connections of like, oh, this City comment sounds like somebody whose Cardinals fandom has rotted their brain a little bit. We got to work on that. And I just think we found a little bit. I think we found one right there.
Yeah, and I think obviously, I can see both sides because like the Blues are doing better now, and they're just kind of throwing pucks on net and getting those ugly goals in front of the net, like I was talking about. But even City, like sometimes it feels like I guess specifically like on the counter, like they get into the 18 or around the 18, and they kind of like Hartel will be like in the middle of the goal mouth and have like one guy that he just needs to make like one move to the left or one move to the right to kind of find a window and just curl it. But then he just passes it off to someone either on his left or his right that might have like a sharper window. And then, it feels like the chance is squandered. And those to me are the most frustrating. So it also might just be that I'm dwelling on those more than the fact that we are constantly breaking down the defense with our skill players. But that's just where my mind goes.
I think, again, that a great moment to have live on the post game, because I think, and we're all guilty of this, but it changes your perspective when you start realizing that you have to give the same credit to the successful play and the 5 things that led up to the successful play. When there's an unsuccessful play, you have to look at the 5 things that led up to it. Because again, that Toteland miss, are we ever going to talk about that after we close out this postgame show? Are we ever going to talk about that play again? No. But in the moment, that play gave you a lot of confidence as a City fan if you're watching it, because Leuven, perfect pass, attacking the back post, which they never did the first 2 games. Huge play there. Toteland, your wingbacks getting more involved on the offensive side. Love seeing that as well. Like, there's so many little positive things from that if it would have been a goal, we probably would be talking about it 3 months from now and say, hey, remember when Leuven sliced that one and Toteland finished it? But because a very hard volley, Toteland doesn't get a good touch on it, we never talk about that pass again. But that pass happened, and it was still a very good play, and it was still just as important as a whipped cross from Leuven that might turn into an assist in a month. They should carry in some ways, not because obviously they weren't finished the same, but from Leuven's side, you have to take those plays and think about them in the exact same way, even though they didn't end up the same way. It's about the process, not the results. And so I think that's why I was wondering why there was so much shifting from negativity to positivity to negativity in the first 3 weeks, because the question was the process that led to the Colorado thing, which we're apparently not mad about, was it so much better than the process that led to the bad game at San Diego? Or did you just kind of get bit by a team that's jumping the league and has a good possession and press system that you didn't expect? And those things, I think, all need to be balanced out when you talk about these first 3 games.
Yeah, I think you can even draw that comparison back to Thor, right? Because, I mean, he was in and around the goal mouth.
Oh, you are getting dangerous
left
here.
And right. But I was
going to let you take this yourself.
We're going to talk about finish.
Thomas Welch talks about why Thor is a missed player right now for St. Louis City. Take over the show.
I'm just saying, I was a victim of it too. Like, I would get caught up in the results and be like, this guy cannot finish to save his life. But at the same time, he's in and around the goal so much, and they're servicing him the ball in those areas. It's the process that will potentially lead to those results. So I think that could definitely draw a comparison in that regard.
By the way, St. Louis City 2 continues to roll on in their MLS Next Pro game against North Texas SC. 82nd minute, North Texas SC is lining up a free kick. But yeah, they lead 3-0. I want everyone to know, just because City's killing it on a Sunday. They're up 6-0 collectively. We also got goals from Miggy Perez and Brendan McSorley.
I'm trying to remember if that game last year in the playoffs was the one where McSorley and there was a whole bunch of red cards at the end, and they were shoving each other. And now you're saying McSorley found the back of the net a couple times, so that's awesome. Yeah, nice revenge game for him.
Yeah, exactly. McSorley and Miggy Perez getting the goals there, and just seeing those things out of the gate. That's just, I mean, we haven't talked a lot about the youth this year, obviously, because there's so much depth right now. They don't need to dip into the youth, but I mean, Miggy Perez getting back involved. He looked bigger in the preseason. Getting Brendan McSorley going, obviously getting guys like Glover going more, seeing that progression. It's so nice to see today too, because I think everyone who's a City fan was a little heartbroken when they had to see Jose Kachima with that beautiful header yesterday.
But it was against Kansas, so that was nice. He still got STL in him.
That's true. He still got STL in him. But so seeing some of these young guys continue to make an impact, I love that. I'm super excited about Jay Reed. Seeing Connor Wallum get other time in other spaces and seeing how dangerous he can be as an attacker. I'm still really excited to get Jay Reed back, because I think that he fits even better as a left wing back than he did in his back 5 than he did as a wing as a left back in the back 4 last year. You tell that kid, just go attack. And I think he's the best attacking wingback from last year. I mean, Totland shows that he's a good crosser, but Totland is not going to one-on-one a guy and break him down the way that Jay Reed's going to do it. Conrad Wallum could probably do it, but he's a much more offensive player, so you should expect that. But from guys last year, I mean, Reed's the only one. And so to get that back, that's another thing I'm excited about. And so seeing those shifts, seeing how willing Olaf is to change the back line, how good Wallum is in other parts of the pitch, it's not going to matter for another month, maybe not even another 2 months, because we don't know how hard it's going to be for Jay Reed to get reacclimated. Heck, we don't even know if Jay Reed's going to catch on with his coaching staff. That's the risk of these kind of things. Why that injury was so crappy. But if he does, I see the vision of how he could really be great looking forward.
Yeah, I mean, the combination of his stride, his size, plus his speed and his ability on the ball, like you said, I mean, I think the ceiling does not exist for how good Jay Reed could be with City in that wingback position. But going back to your comments on the prospects, I think it's almost detrimental how successful Kojima was with this team, because especially in St. Louis, like we know with the Blues and Cardinals, like people are not patient with prospects at all. I feel like specifically for soccer, like you need to be, because there's so many levels that they can go through in terms of their development and how they get to the MLS and how successful they are once they get there.
And how tough is it that, you know, from our perspective, like when you're trying to explain MLS to new fans, one of the things you get to is, oh, hey, the Super Draft doesn't matter that much. Unless you pick in the top 3, you're not going to get much. And even if you do, you're not going to do much from there. And so for them to then have such success right out of the gate with not even a top pick in the first round of the MLS Super Draft, I think that kind of threw people off. Just like the first season, I think we're talking about a lot of different scenarios where they kind of ruined expectations and changed the bar that fans expect. And we got to dial it back, because you will not get that kind of impact from a mid-first round MLS Super Draft pick, maybe for the next decade. Like it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, and even a guy like Miggy Perez, or you like put him on loan and he's not getting a ton of minutes, but you know, he's getting experience with another club. And I see people online that are like, "Oh, Miggy Perez is a bust." He's like, dude, he is so young. Like, let's give him a chance to kind of, you know, prove himself and work his way through the ranks. And
what have you done for me lately, Lord Almighty?
No kidding. Like, let's get some meat on those bones. He's gonna get his workouts in. Like, he's a young guy. He's got all the potential in the world. I feel like any of the guys that come into City, especially with the way that their academy is set up, and now with Olaf at the helm, like the ceilings are just phenomenal for these kids. So let's give them the chance to blossom and just enjoy the ride.
There it is. That is the City Hub postgame. I'm Matthew Rocchio. That's Thomas Welch. Thank you so much to all of you for watching and listening here on Sports Hub STL. If you haven't already, like and subscribe here on the YouTube so you get the notification whenever we go live. We will go live after every major sporting event. In fact, we're wrapping this up because, even though people are still hanging on with us, we got to go because the City Blues Hub postgame is actually coming on next, because the Blues are wrapping one up. So we got a postgame show, another postgame show on Sports Hub STL, also presented by Hot Shot Sports Bar and Grill, home of STL's fans since 1990. All the games, all the times. Thank you so much for Hot Shots for presenting these postgame shows live on Sports Hub STL. Thank you so much to the commenters, and thank you so much for joining me tonight, Thomas.
Yep, absolutely. Had a blast, Rock.
Absolutely. St. Louis City goes into action next week, facing off against Seattle down at City Park. We'll see you there. We'll talk to you from there as City faces off again, and they wrap this one up. Dominant second half and a 3-0 victory. Have a great night, St. Louis.